Beats by Dallas, make it hurt.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the episode of Let's Talk Commercial Real Estate Investing, the Black Community Edition. I'm your humble host, Dominic Green, Managing Partner of Tenneco Commercial Real Estate here in Dallas. It is, as always, Education Wednesdays. This is where we come together and discuss things that are happening in commercial real estate, things that I'm seeing, providing some insight, providing some knowledge, things that I learned because I'm always continuing to learn. And just passing that information on. This is the platform to do that, to help us as a community work together, collaborate, and leverage our experiences, knowledge, income, and all that stuff to go out and acquire income-producing commercial real estate for those that are interested in that, and then for those that develop, I guess, to provide some insight as well. And then also, as I've realized here recently, for those that are necessarily don't want to do any work and rather just be very passive, because they enjoy what they do full time, whatever that may be, whether they're a doctor or lawyer. But they do want to put some money and capital to work, and that's fine as well. I believe we should be in all three phases in some instances. But today I just wanted to kind of not necessarily recap, but do a follow up. As I talked last week, as I realized that, I've talked about, what's going on in the market, but what about for people that, want to invest? What is the process they should go through? What are some things they should consider? Besides doing what I'm doing as a managing partner, I told you guys before, I'm working on putting together a group to do something that's more mission driven as well from an investment standpoint to acquire and preserve workforce housing, just given from experience. And then, prior to that, especially senior housing as well, having certain requests from family members asking about that. And just when you drive and look at these properties, man, you're like, man, these things are in horrible condition. And, I can only imagine, especially for people on fixed income and stuff like that. So, I think when you start digging into it, you realize how big the challenge it is. And with that challenge comes opportunity to both solve a problem. And they're both, solve a problem and also, get a return on your investment as well. So you can do, basically do both. Investing with a purpose, and having your income do more, having your capital, I would say, provide a return both as a social impact and as well as a financial impact, right? You can do both. You can make money and do good at the same time, right? So with that being said, just kind of further elaborating or maybe getting a little bit of details, but, for those that, want to consider just investing in certain opportunities, kind of what I go through when I'm looking at offering memorandums from all these brokers, especially I'm trying to learn the area, trying to learn what's going on, understand a product type, and understand what some of the benchmarks are for a certain type of asset class. So I'm looking at always reviewing and trying to figure out what's normal, what's not. So when I do come across the opportunity that I'm looking for specifically, I have a reference and a benchmark. So, you got to look at tons and tons of deals. You'll hear that everywhere all the time. Tons and tons of opportunity. But you also got to understand the fundamentals and understand the basics. Because you're buying a business, right? Revenue minus expenses equals your operating income, and then any debt service, anything debts that you have to pay after that, less that is your cash flow, which is something that's available to be distributed to yourself. So with all that being said, when you guys are looking at these opportunities, somebody sends you, which is an offering memorandum, OM, and basically just it's like a sales brochure to tell you, here's the type of investment, here's what we plan on doing, here's why we like this particular asset class that we want to acquire, for how much, and here's kind of the conditions that we're acquiring them under, and the business plan, and then how we're going to return some money to you as an investor. So I kind of look at it as when I'm looking at any of these offer memorandums, first and foremost, is this something that I'm interested in? Does it fit my investment criteria? I think that's first and foremost the biggest thing and the biggest challenge, especially my experience in brokerage, right? When people ask, hey, I'll invest in anything. Well, what does that mean? Anything, there's commercial real estate is far, vast, and wide. And then there's nuances and there's niches. I mean, it's too large of a asset class to say I'll invest in anything. No. That means you didn't take the time to actually sit down and figure out what you have interest in, what return metrics you need, what are your criteria from a sponsor, a property, a market, what areas do you feel comfortable investing in, all that, to narrow it down so you can be more focused, so you understand the opportunities that are presented for you, whether to pass or to proceed forward. Because it takes a lot of time to underwrite deals. I'll let you know that, especially something that you're interested in. So with that being said, I think that's the first and foremost and most important thing. What is your criteria? What is your investment criteria? What type of returns are you seeking based on your particular individual needs, goals, and obligations? So starting there, right? So once you kind of figure that out, you say, hey, I want to invest. Let's just say, for instance, we're talking multifamily, which is on fire right now, as well as industrial. So for the multifamily product, what type of asset class, A, B, or C? Is it workforce housing? Is it Class A? Is it lifestyle? Is it an urban mixed use? Is it downtown? Is it suburban? Stuff like that. The nitty gritty. So when you're looking at this offer memorandums, where is the property located is key. What type of market? What's going on in that market? Is the market going up? Is the market going down? Are we at the high point of the market where we need to be more cautious because things can change? All that factors in. And then, digging down to the actual market, sub-market itself. What's the median income? What's the population density? Who is the employment drivers, employers? What type of retail is around? Stuff like that. So, you kind of look at the market, you're looking at the property, how old is it? Older properties obviously require more capital to maintain. Newer properties, not so much. But in the reverse of that, newer properties, especially if it's some new development, there's a lease up here that requires a lot of upfront money and marketing, and commissions, and a team, which is only in most cases temporary. So that's one thing you will notice, that the payroll will change because when you're in the lease up mode, you're going to have more people trying to lease up. And then once you kind of stabilize, you kind of relax that and get to more normalization. So yeah, and I guess that brings up a point. Is this an existing property or is this a new development? Is this a redevelopment? Is this conversion? Because especially during COVID, we had a lot of people who were converting hotels into multifamily and affordable housing, right? So that's key to understand what exactly are they doing to the property, what type of property it is. And then along with the market. And then overall, what's the business plan, right? So what are they planning to do to this property? Is it a property they just plan on doing a light rehab to, given its age, given the things they want to do to it, and then they're going to cash flow it? Light rehab is anywhere, estimated 3 to 5. I was surprised, say 3 to 5,000 per unit in the interiors. You probably spend maybe another two or three or so on the exterior, depending on what the game plan is. To where if you're doing what's they call a deep value add, where they're basically taking these things down to the studs. I mean, that interior renovation can jump anywhere to 10 to 15, and then kind of go from there. So yeah, sorry about that. So they do the, looking at the business plan, what they're doing to the interiors, what they're doing to the exterior. More than likely, if this is a value add play, how they're going to increase the value, so they can recapture it, increase their rents, in conjunction with increasing, the interiors, the perceived value in some cases. Changing out management maybe is a big thing. Lowering expenses, find ways to better amenitize the property to be more competitive. And then one thing that I do personally is I try to figure out what's the competitive advantage, because that's what I look at when I'm looking at these properties. Because for me, I'm going to be a longer term holder, especially it takes so much time and effort just to locate the opportunity, right? And negotiate and all that good stuff, just to get it and, fix it up and then be out of it, in a couple of years. Unless, the market changes, which, right now, if I had the property for a while and this is the type of market we're in where cap rates are compressing, continue to compress, and probably compress a little bit more. Rents are at all-time high. So, it's, maybe the opportunity presents itself. So there's something to have a discussion with, the team at that time and then investors, what to do. Because maybe the property performed or hasn't performed to our expectations, and maybe it's just time to move on and go on to redeploy that capital to a better opportunity. So, nonetheless, the business plan, understanding that it's something they just buying and going to cash flow it, so it's like a core type of core property where we have to do very little to it, if anything. Basically, you're just going to cash flow it's new construction, new development. Because right now, also, in this market, people are buying ground up developments before lease up. That's kind of a value add play, taking on the risk to lease it up. And developers, hey, they can get in, cash out early. So, looking at the business plan, looking at so we looked at the fundamentals, the type of property. We first started with our investment criteria, and then looking at the business plan, and then now we start getting into the type of returns, expectations. How is that structured, right? In some cases, when you're looking at these offer memorandums, they're offering, a split 70-30, which means 70% is owned by the LPs, which is a limited partnership, which you would be, limited partner, which you would be, unless you're driving the deal. Or you could be driving the deal and also on that side. So, there's variance to do it. But nonetheless, 70-30 split. So 70% of ownership of the property is to the LPs, 30% is to the general partners, the sponsors. In some cases, it can be 80-20. I mean, it can be anything. It's just a matter of understanding what that ownership structure is, and then how does that relate to the return distributions. Is it the same? Is it disproportionate? So in some cases, if you got 70-30 ownership, the distributions of the cash flow and when you have a capital event, so when it sells, the sale proceeds are distributed the same way. In some cases, they're not. So this is something where a lot of times, when you're looking at these offer memorandums, they'll tell you to look at their private placement memorandum and operating agreement to understand exactly what's how these things are going to be distributed in what's called a waterfall, right? So basically, it's just where distributed cash flow from the property comes down fills the first bucket. And in most cases, like I said, there's a preferred return. In some cases, there is. Some cases, there's not. I know some syndicators out there, some sponsors, teams are moving away from that, just given, I guess, for they're saying that, and it just depends on how it models, that some of these deals are getting tighter. So they're doing 80-20, 90-10, just to get the deal across the line and raise the capital. But nonetheless, some still offer preferred return. Now, where they can meet that preferred return, that's a whole different thing. And I guess that's a whole other discussion when you're talking about underwriting, right? So with that being said, the preferred return is basically the first bucket that's filled up. So that basically means that the first, whatever percentage, 6%, 8% of the distributed cash flow is going to you as the LP. And then anything after that is split. Or there could be a catch-up provision in there. So basically what that means is after the LPs get their 8%, then the sponsor gets 100% of the distributed cash flows to a certain percentage, whatever that may be, to catch up. And then after that, then the cash flows are split. And then it can be the same thing where for the sales proceeds as well. So that's something to pay attention to. A lot of times that I can tell you from just experience looking at these offerings, when they offer these preferred returns, they're offering 8, 10, 12, whatever. You also got to see in relationship what is the type of deal. So is that something more towards something that's already existing, Or is it something that's going to be a ground up development where, in ground up development, you don't get cash flows until, well, stabilized cash flows to probably about year 3.5. 2, you probably start getting, and then it also depends on the type of construction product that you have. So, yeah, and it just varies. It all depends, and that's something you probably hear me a lot say. It depends. But with that being said, just figure out how the cash flows are distributed. Is this a return? Also looking at, is this a return of capital, return on capital? So that basically means return on capital, which is favorable to you as a limited partner. Basically, whatever the percentage of the preferred is, you're going to be receiving that. Whereas return of capital is any of the distributed cash flows are not going to pay that preferred or not paying the return on your investment, but rather just repaying the principal or the capital that you provided initially. So your initial capital. So they're dwindling that down. And that's kind of in more cases, that's sponsor friendly, right? Because from a sponsor standpoint, if I can lower the initial capital, that means I have a preferred on that. That means I pay a little bit less of preferred because that capital balance is lower. And then it helps me get to my portion of the returns or whatever that split is a lot sooner than later. So this is something to pay attention to. Like I said, the splits, the waterfalls, the returns, and then there's also, when you get the PPM, it's a very long document, probably about 100 some pages, and it basically just tells you, hey, this is how you're going to lose your money. That's basically what it is. But with that being said, you need to know exactly how you can lose your money and what all the risks are, and if the risk is worth the reward or the opportunity. In conjunction with the operating agreement, how the property is going to be structured, ownership structure, who's in charge, who makes the decisions, do you have any voting rights? And then also one other key thing when you're looking at these offer memorandums. So, because most of the properties that I've seen, especially if you're talking about residential multifamily, they're using a lot of bridge debt because bridge debt is highly available, better terms. But in some cases, you'll see that people are getting what's called preferred equity. Okay, so in the I guess the acquisition capital stack, I would say, or just the capital stack, funding capital stack, right? You're gonna have your debt, your senior debt, which is gonna come from some type of bank, life company, or whatever, and they're gonna, usually 60 to 70% of the funding, right? And then right above them is the preferred equity, and after that is the common equity. In some cases, it's just the senior debt, and then it's the common equity. But in the other instance, you will see that some people have a preferred equity partner who sits right above the senior debt. And so in most cases, that way it's structured is the preferred equity is bringing a big check. So they're going to kind of dictate some terms. But at the same time, they're going to get a certain percentage return on their money. And then that's it. So they don't get any participation in the upside, if the property sells, or, once they get their money out and their percentage, whether that's 10, 12%, and not to get too technical, but, they have like a current pay is what they're getting paid on, and then they have a equity kicker, upon a refi capital or exit. But I guess we'll talk about that more in depth later. But definitely if you guys want to know more, we can discuss that. But nonetheless, the reason because of that, they're not participating, or they shouldn't be participating. But it also depends on the deal and how much money they bring. But nonetheless, it's because, like I said, they're basically right above the senior debt. So you as a common equity holder in that scenario are a little bit higher, kind of like almost like a second position, right? Or third position in that case. So there's a little bit more risk to you because once the debt service gets paid, the preferred people get paid next. Then if anything's left over, then you as the common equity, the LP in that scenario gets paid. So you got to pay attention to that. Typically, and there's also financial guidelines, but typically, you don't want to be the deferred equity more than 20%. Obviously, I've seen it anywhere between 15, 10, somewhere in that range. Understand their terms, and then look at their model, because usually they show you underwriting model. Some people provide it. When they have the offering, or it's in the PBM, and sometimes you have to request it, or you can actually run it yourself, because that's also one thing you need to be able to do. You need to be able to underwrite the deal yourself. So for those who don't like math, if you want to be in investing, you're going to have to like math. But it's nothing complicated, right? Because what you want to see is, based on the projections. Remember I talked about earlier in that first video prior, we talked about assumptions and stuff like that. That's key. Based on projections and assumptions, when that distributed cash flow, once all the revenue comes in, all the expenses are paid for, the debt service is taken care of, and then you have your cash flow after that, your net cash flow. You want to see if, based on what they're projecting, when do you get your share of that distributed cash flow? And a lot of times, if they have preferred equity, there's really not enough cash flow to go around that makes it to that next bucket, which would be you as the common equity. And usually you don't see that until, I've seen scenarios you don't see that until like maybe year 2 to 3, and it depends on the deal and how tight the numbers had to be when they sharpen the pencil to try to get the deal. So you probably don't get anything until year 2 and 3. But in most cases, the language in there is going to be that you're going to accrue. So anything that you don't get is going to be cumulative and transfer to the next year. So your balance basically increases in a sense. But you also got to pay attention that a lot of people don't have in there what's in that preferred return is just cumulative, but non-compounding. So it basically means that if they miss that payment, yes, it accrues, but it doesn't add to your initial equity investment to where they're going to pay a preferred on that balance. So basically, just hey, we miss. So instead of adding, so say you put $1 million in, and you're supposed to get 100,000, but you don't get any of that. So basically, it's 100,000 next year plus another 100,000, right? That needs to be paid out. But if it's one of those things where it's compounded, so that basically that 100 is added to your million. So your equity is at 101. I mean, 101, well, 1,000,001. And then they owe you whatever the preferred is on that. So it can grow, right? So a lot of times you see that. Sometimes you see it in there, oftentimes not. And most of the times it's going to be cumulative, but non-compounding. But what you're really trying to see is when you're going to get your check, right? Because oftentimes it's set up to where they pay you monthly or they pay you quarterly. So that's key. And then obviously, because that's key. You want to know when you're going to get yours, get paid, unless you're the preferred equity, right? And then also in that, when you're reviewing documents, looking at how communications happen, do you get paid monthly, do you get paid quarterly, and stuff like that. And I guess that leads me into looking at the sponsorship team, right? What type of experience, how many people are in GP? If it's just one person, you probably want to, just have more questions about, hey, is it really just going to be you? You're running everything. You're running all the hats. Do you have key man life insurance? In the event that, let's just say hypothetically, as they say, you're crossing the street, you get hit by a bus, you're coming downstairs of your apartment complex or your condo, and you trip and fall, and you land head first on concrete, and you're incapacitated, right? So there's nobody there in charge. So typically you want to have more than one person in that sponsorship group. Idea of their experience, there are going to be people that start new. I don't have experience myself in the actual syndication. It's going to be a process of learning, but I am putting together a team that has, overall experience, and then we're going to use professionals that have experience in putting these things together. So as long as somebody around has experience and the team has experience, I think that's fine, even though they may be new. Because people start new stuff all the time. Startups, they're just more riskier. You just got to understand the risk, understand what you're getting into. Any type of track record, whether that's professional, that they can point to, whether it's they've done this before, get references from their investors, and what they invest again, why, what they like, what they didn't like, if you can. And most of the time, they'll provide that information, especially if they want to continue to grow in this business. This is not a hobby, and make sure that's the key too. Are they doing this full time? They doing this part time, right? Because real estate. One thing I learned in real estate, man, when I first got started, you have all these seminars and stuff like that, and you too can be an investor. You too can do this and do that. So if something that happened on the weekend, next thing you know, they're out there telling you, hey, they're doing this and doing that. But this is something they do full time, right? Because I think when you're doing it, especially in real estate, when I was getting into brokerage, it's not something you can do part time. You got to be involved. You got to be there. And the same thing I'm going to be doing with with this other venture. This is going to be full time, every day, all day. That's all I'll be doing. But what is their time commitment? Are they full time? What are their systems? What are their processes? Are they using a management team? Are they doing in-house? What else can I think? Oh, and most importantly, are they putting skin in the game, right? Now, I'm not saying that, they need to put, $10 million, $20 million, but, if they're asking you to put 25, they put 25. And so, they lose their money, you lose your money, they lose their money. So there should be some type of skin in the game, investing alongside your investors. If you truly believe in it, you'll put some money to work at risk as well. So if they're not doing any of that, that's something to pay attention to. But yeah, I think that's kind of a good overview of kind of how to look at these things from perspective. You guys are looking to be more passive as opposed to being active, which I'm working to do is be active. So I'll be doing all the legwork, doing stuff that I've already been doing before. And then just putting the team together, putting the systems together, make sure we have our KPIs and the process and stuff like that. So if that's something you're not necessarily interested in doing, the other side is being passive. And, you just check on your investments, click on the portals, read your statements, and continue doing what you're doing, put money to work, and let other people do the work for you. So there's various ways. But I think that's something important that I think we should have a discussion about. Because like I said, most of the time I've just been talking about what's going on in the market, what to look for, and the type of investments to get into, but not necessarily breaking it down on kind of doing a little bit of due diligence and doing some reviewing. So hope that helps. Hope that brings some value to you guys. If there's anything you guys want to add on, definitely do add it in the comments. Let's like, share, subscribe. Definitely, that's important. Like, share, subscribe. Get us a thumbs up. Got to hit that algorithm, obviously, so that way more people like us can see the content, and then just spread the word. Somebody, hey man, let's have this continue to just grow this group. Let's have that conversation. Because like I said before, this is a platform for us to have those discussions, to collaborate, to come together, to work together for the common goal. In my opinion, at least the goal here that I'm setting here is to acquire commercial income producing commercial real estate, and then do stuff varies off of that as we continue to learn, as the market changes, as things change. We provide that information here. So like I said, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Is there anything you guys want to learn more about? Like I said, I don't know everything. Learning is a continuous journey, especially in commercial real estate. There's something to learn new every day. There's information every day. Things change. So it's a lifelong process. I'm committed to learning, committed to the research, committed to the goals. So it's something we need to look at. Somebody can provide experience or provide their insight on it. Definitely do that here. So like I say, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like, and let's continue the conversation. All right. So until next time, guys, as I always say, happy investing, happy holidays. Deuces.
These by Dallas make it hurt.